Hello, everyone. I am very happy to see Mandy Bankson, Nina Bonos, Sally Baker, and Nicole Hours. And we are here to talk together, to speak a little bit, to enlighten each other a little bit on why we're artists, what we're doing, why we're doing it, what inspires us. And it's going to be great for us. Just imagine that we are just this tiny little group in our living room, and we're talking about it, right? So forget everyone else can listen to it, but it's about you. Okay, so I don't know if there's anyone who would like to start.
I don't necessarily want to, but I would be happy to.
Thank you, Sally. And so, Sally, do you need any introduction? Do you want me to go to your page, or would you like to talk a little bit before in general about, your work?
I can just say a little bit. My name's Sally Baker. I'm a watercolor artist. I've been a part of the Open Studios for over 30 years. I was a high school art teacher teaching ceramics, and I was becoming overwhelmed with teaching it and doing ceramics. So the watercolor was just for me. I found a wonderful teacher when we first moved to Sonoma County. My husband saw an ad in the paper for wine country artists. And it was in Napa. And for a week I drove out to Napa. I'd never been there before. And met the teacher that would be my teacher for over 30 years, Sandra Freckleton. She lived in upstate New York. And I went back there almost every year to one of her workshops. And her husband, Jack Beal, was another well-known New York artist. And he was the composition man. She was the technique person. And together, they helped me form my style. I do sharp focus watercolors. I feel like people are so intent on moving through this life very quickly that my goal is to get people to slow down, hopefully paint something that captivates them long enough that they will stay for a while to look at it. I like to confound people with the notion of how watercolor can be used. Most people, when they use watercolor, it's their elementary school experience that kind of forms their notion of how watercolor can be used. And most people think of it as washy and flowy. And I like the fact that there's this crazy medium that I feel like I'm taming. And I also am very, very passionate about color. So the more intense colors, the better as far as I'm concerned. And I paint very slowly. So I can spend at least a month on a painting. It's built up with many layers and very slowly, and it's very meditative for me. And that's just the way I work. I can't do it very loose and flowy. That makes me crazy. So
I have immediately some questions about that. So, and I also want to ask others about this. But the first one is when I look, for example, at the painting behind you, Sally, with the blue lines. So are you saying this is layered? This is not like you right away take some dark blue and put it on there?
That's right. There's probably 8 or 10 layers on the blue stripes on the fabric.
Wow.
Because with watercolor, if you put it down as intensely as you want it to be at the end, it shuts out all the light. Whereas if you build it up with thin layers, it allows the light of the paper to sparkle through it.
Very interesting. I wanted to ask the other artist, because I thought it was so nice that you mentioned your mentor and your teacher. Is there any artist, Nicole or Nina or Mandy, is there this particular person who really inspired you or helped you in becoming the artist that you are?
Yes, and I see her picture on the screen right now. It's Marcia Connell. I took watercolor classes from her for, I'm not sure how many years, 4 or 5 years. And she really inspired me, and some of the books that she presented to me and some of the techniques that she taught me, I still use today. Thank you, Marcia.
That's great.
What about Mandy? Because Mandy, I read
Thank
in
you,
your
Nina.
description as well.
You're
So that
welcome.
the spiritual element as well, Mandy. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I do see, I'm looking for beauty, and I feel like beauty speaks to all of us in a really deep and spiritual way. And so it's just my way of responding back to, you know, to be able to paint. And I feel like I see the world in this kind of like a big abstract painting. You know, if you really look at things closely, there's lines and colors and shapes. And I do a talk in Art Trails where I show pictures, because I take a bunch of pictures, and I have this beautiful picture I show of the rust on a Home Depot cart. But if you really look at it, it's gorgeous, you know. So I think we're all inspired by nature, which is obviously amazing. But if you really look around, there's amazing things just even in man-made things. And so I think I like abstract because I can play with all that. And I have a lot of layers too, Sally, like yours, but that you don't necessarily see. But for me, it's an improvisational process. So partly I just start out, I don't have a plan, and I love that. And it's totally opposite than the way I live my life, which is I'm a really to-do list person. So it's very different, but I love that improvisational part of it. But then I step back, it's not all, you know, then I study it and so forth. But I'm not sure I answered your question. But
Well, I don't think I asked you the right question, because I asked you about a special person, and then I mentioned.
Oh, that's right.
So it was my fault. It's not yours, not at all. But yeah, so it's not at all. So let me ask Nicole as well, because I haven't heard Nicole yet. If you had a special teacher in your life, or is there any other subject that you would like to talk about right now?
Well, when I was a preschooler, there was a painter who was the instructor in oil painting at Sacramento State College, where my parents went for instruction so they could earn more as teachers. And they found that this very understanding oil painting teacher would allow me as a little preschooler to sit on a high stool at the back of the class and paint. And so, yeah, that was very inspirational, and it also hooked me forever on oil painting. But Shiro Obata is a Japanese brush painter from whom I had some lessons. He was an instructor to my mother for a very long time, and just the whole philosophy of painting in the Japanese way, which has a lot to do with spirit, a lot to do with flow, a lot to do with meditation and opening. So that's part of it. And when I went to college, everything was abstract expressionism. But Ralph Ducasse was the head of the department and sort of took me under his wing, mostly to protect me from abstract expressionism, because I wasn't interested. And I was allowed to just kind of find my own way. So I appreciate him for that as well. But for me, the instruction comes from just absorbing everything that I can in this world, from people, from the beauty I see around me, from that kind of, you know, what Mandy was describing of looking deeply at things. And then once I start painting, there comes a point always where the painting tells me what it wants. And so my job then is just to attend to it and to make sure I'm listening accurately to what it's trying to tell me, and then to follow its directions. And I am constantly discovering and growing in that way. And so it just feels like such a blessing to have a need in this world to reach as deeply as I can, and yet always be open to the breadth and variety of all that is.
Yeah, yeah, Sally?
I was just going to say that for people that know me, I am not as organized in the rest of my life as I am in my painting. Marcia has heard me say it a lot of times, but I use my car as a large purse for example. And yet, if you looked at my paintings, you would think that I was very organized. But I think it's the one place in my life that I have total control. The rest, as we all know, is beyond our control. So,
Nina, do you want to say something about this as well?
Yes. So some of you have a real style that you stick to most of the time, where I vacillate between different expressions. Some of my work is really spontaneous and intuitive, and I also work in watercolor primarily, and others are a result of weeks of, or sometimes months of sketches, pencil sketches on clear print. My background's in architecture, so I take some of that with me into this medium, and work with layers of paint, 5 or 6 layers, often on a white background, which it's taken, I've been doing watercolor for 35 years. It's probably taken 25 years to have the confidence that I can use intense blues and purples and reds with many layers and not spill anything. I think, you know, a lot of people say that watercolor is difficult. It's not a forgiving medium. But after working with it for decades, you find ways that you can cover up mistakes. Or a lot of times, quote, mistakes take me in a new direction. I started out taking classes from Marcia when my son, who's now 35, when I was pregnant with him. And I was doing mostly for the first 10 years or so, plein air painting. And then I started cutting and tearing things up and making collages. But in the beginning, it was only a collage from a single watercolor painting that I had painted on location. And I remember once tearing up a collage that was a pretty big piece, and it had a view of Mount St. Helena and a long road leading up to it. And I was halfway through tearing a piece that was maybe 15 inches long, and it broke. And I thought, oh, what do I do now? I made a mistake. And I just thought, you know, maybe this path has to go in a different direction. And I rescued the painting. And then I remember distinctly, and seriously, this is over 30 years ago, where some people were walking through my studio and I was showing them my paintings, and just off the top of my head, I told them what had happened with that. And I said, I wish I had the attitude in my life that I had with that painting. And I heard what I said, and I've been working for the last 30 plus years to adopt that attitude, and it really has helped. But I vacillate between, even a few weeks ago, some of the paintings that are on the Savos site. There's ones with iris, purple iris, and those were some that took these careful drawings. And in between doing those, so this is the one that would be in the bottom, oops. Well, there you see it, and yeah, that's part of the painting. Oh, no, actually, that's one of 3 or 4 of those that I did, each one taking weeks. And in the middle of that, I was working on a commission where somebody wanted something very impressionistic with figs. So you see to the right of that, there's a fig painting that actually was a detail from some Torah mantles that I made from paintings that were, images were digitized and printed on fabric. So those were very distinct, but somebody bought a piece that was from a different time where I was really loose and wanted figs in the same style. So after working on these iris for weeks and months, almost a whole year, I just went out one afternoon, got some figs from my fig tree, strung them up on a big branch and painted the shadows. And it was just such a welcome relief. So I changed my styles according to how I'm feeling. It's a way of moving energy through my body and just having fun with all of this.
I am so impressed with how versatile our artists are. Just as a comparison now, I'm going to show a landscape by Nicole Hours. Just be prepared. Okay, here we go. Isn't that amazing? You know, all these artists in this group are so talented. You're all established artists, and you have all such a different style. This is what I think is so exciting when you look at the Savos website, that you see all these differences in artists, but you are so, it's so, in all of them, I get like totally carried away. Do you want to say something, Nicole, about those landscapes? And then we go back to Mandy and Sally. Don't worry.
I just welcome the generous inspiration that I get from life, from the changes moment to moment in looking, and from being pulled into looking with a greater depth and heart at the world around me rather than just passing by. And again, you know, some of you were talking about what you hope will be part of the experience for someone enjoying your art. And for me too, having my art be a road into a greater depth of experiencing life, it would be an ideal. You know, when that happens, it's such a joy when someone stops and really looks and starts engaging in that sense of being connected that comes from looking deeply. That's just the most wonderful, joyful thing for me.
Thank you, Nicole. So let's go back. Who wants to go next, Sally or Mandy? I'm going to show your work. You can decide. Okay, let's go back to, let me see a minute. Is this Mandy? Let me see. Okay, this is Mandy. All right, and we looked at one of her pieces, but we want to go to the site where we see more of it. I don't know if I can do that. Am I going to be totally out of it now? I don't know. Okay, here we go. Here we go, Mandy.
So I don't know that I want to, I'm not, whoop.
Yeah, I don't know where that went. Let me see. Let me see. Let's see how we use this site. It should work.
Yeah, it should work.
There we go. And now we go to you. For anyone who hasn't used the website yet, this is how it works.
Good demonstration.
I know, I know. There we go.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that I have one I particularly want to talk about. As you can, I mean, my style's fairly varied too. I always feel like I'm trying to find like one style, and I keep experimenting and trying different things. And so I feel like some people you can tell, oh, this is, you know, a so-and-so, but people say they can tell, but I can't tell because my work has a lot of variation. And I go through periods like the first two are sort of browns and blacks, and I love that. And then I go for bright colors. I'm very interested in movement and in trying to create depth in the pieces. Like the one down there at the bottom, the red and black one, there's a lot of ins and outs, I think. And
Do you choose your titles yourself, or do you ask someone to help you with it?
Oh yeah, titles are so hard. Sometimes I choose them myself, and then I have various people I show. You know, I have a friend, I send her a piece and say, "What do you think?" You know, because I like to give like some kind of a feel, kind of, but without telling somebody what to see. And with abstract, it's really difficult. You know, so yeah. It's that's a whole nother part after they're finished.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're lovely titles too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Sally now, because we haven't seen her work yet here. Let me see. This is where I have to go back one page.
Okay.
Let me see. How do I go back? I hope I'm not out of it again. Maybe otherwise I'll have to demonstrate you. No, here we go. We have it.
So
Here we
Catherine,
go.
maybe go to the top. Well, you can just leave them. I was going to say the top, middle, or that one's fine too. Any of them are fine. The one thing that I think I wanted to say was compositionally, one of the things that is important when you are deciding what you're going to paint is finding an entryway for the viewer. So usually diagonal lines will take you in and curved lines will move you around the piece. So you don't want to, one of the mantras that my teachers always taught was, you don't call it dead center for nothing. So you don't want to take the viewer in and stop them somewhere such that their eyes don't move around the piece. And then the other thing in working with watercolor, because of the way the medium works, you can't really decide spur of the moment if you're doing the kind of painting that I'm doing. It's very planned and organized. And so another one of their mantras was think slow, paint fast. So you think about what you're going to paint at one particular moment, kind of gather yourself, and then you paint it with confidence because you know what you're doing. With watercolor, if you paint very loosely, that's not what you need to do. But if you're painting very stylistically in an accurate representation of something, you really have to think about it before you put brush to paper.
I cannot believe all those reflections in here. But sorry,
Yeah.
Nicole, you wanted to ask something, right?
No, just, yeah, that I think that it's such an important piece to be prepared. And each of us probably has our own vocabulary of how it is that we prepare. But for me, it's very much the same thing. Even though I paint pretty rapidly, I figure that the preparation for it comes in the depth of all that I do before it.
Right. And you bring, somebody will ask you, well, how long did it take you to paint this painting? And I've now started saying 71 years.
Yeah, that's the answer I give. It's a great answer.
Yeah.
Because you bring all of your experience to what you're doing. You think about it when you're driving the car. Sometimes you dream about the solution that's going to happen when you've got something that's puzzling. But the other thing about my work is that although I am a representational painter, I love playing with the abstract things that happen inside of glass or through glass or reflected back at me. So although I do paint representationally, I'm really fascinated by abstraction and reflections.
There's such a strong abstract core to your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's probably, I love Mandy's work because I feel like it's a close-up of something that I would like to do.
Yeah, it is just a close-up. And if you look at some of yours, they could be abstract. If you just zoomed in on parts of yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing is, though, that you will always, can never escape your own style. I mean, you can never escape that. You remember Janet Chernovsky? You know, she always said, I would so much love to paint abstract. And I cannot do it, and she tried. And I'm not saying you can't get close to it, but when you have your style, that's what it is, right? So, but you know what I love with this website is actually we really have so much time to look at the work individually. So, for example, now I really like seeing the shadow here in your piece. And also what I also really like here, what I never would have noticed maybe otherwise because I'm going too fast, is those tiny little white stitches at the back of your cloth there. So yeah, I mean, it's you can say what you want. I mean, it's lovely to be in person, but sometimes it's really nice to have all the time to look at the work really, really closely this way.
I think one of the things that all of us as artists are trying to do is to get people to see.
Yes.
When I was teaching, especially with high school students, their life is so fast and they're so glued to their phones and their computers that to get them to slow down and really look at something, it was just such a joy.
I love this quote by E.B. White, the children's author. He says, always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. And I think, it's such a It's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's so fun in our studios when they are in person, when you see somebody really like find those stitches, you know, something I've thought about and then somebody actually sees it, you know,
Yes.
and
Or conversely, when they see something in your painting that totally had escaped you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Totally.
Whenever I do a painting, I always have a favorite part of it. It could be just a drop of paint, a splash, or something that happened unintentionally. Do any of you other panelists have that same aspect to your work?
I often find I like a certain part, but it's usually not a drip.
I can, oh, go
Go ahead.
ahead. You go ahead.
No. Well, I was just going to say, I think there's lessons about life. We've referred to it in painting, right? In the studio. So one of them is, you know, finding the, like, seeing what seems like a mistake, like the drip, and then realizing what that can give the painting, you know? So those, you know, letting go of, I'm the opposite of Sally. Like my paintings are really improv, but my life's kind of organized. And so learning to let go of control, find the surprises, you know, and enjoy them, you know, and find out what they have to offer. So it's.
I do not, yeah, I don't have happy accidents in my work.
I guess the question can go beyond happy accidents to say, I mean, with almost every painting I do, I have something that's my favorite part. And sometimes when people come and you get to tell the stories of the work, you know, we keep this, I'm a really social person and I can't stand the isolation, the forced isolation that I have being a studio artist. And when the pandemic happened, I kind of chuckled and said, oh, now, haha, now people are going to know what my life is like. But to me, making the painting is part of it, part of the story. And finishing the story is when people come to my studio, or sometimes I've been doing this for years, selling work over the internet and the phone, and being able to tell those stories that sometimes, you know, we write artist statements, but there's all these levels because my work is really personal and I don't put all of those stories out there because it's just a little bit too much. But when people come and we get to tell those stories and we have that exchange, then it seems like the work really is finished or has this patina, and it's an adventure. And even though this is really fun doing it this way, it's you know, it's a different time. So
It's a conversation, and it's
Yeah.
so exciting when it takes off as a conversation and doesn't just stay static.
exactly.
Yeah. And going back to two of the other points, I feel as though I do have favorite parts sometimes as I'm going along. I'll fall in love with this or that passage, but more often than not, the painting will say, oh, fine, we're done with that now. And I have to paint it over and do something different because it's not growing into the wholeness that the painting needs to become. And the other thing was what Catherine was saying about style. And I think that even though each of us has different sort of variations on our themes, the signature of our spirit is in each painting, but not because we choose to try and do things in a specific style necessarily, as much as that no matter how much we grow and change and how much our work may explore different avenues, it comes out of our own spirit and our own vision. So it's marked by us, even if it differs greatly from something at an earlier time or of a different mode.
Yeah. Well said, Nicole.
Yes,
Sally?
well said.
The other thing when Nina was talking about favorite parts, the thing that's always been interesting to me, and particularly I think more so maybe when I was doing pottery, is that invariably the thing that's my favorite or my favorite painting is very rarely what somebody else's is. And so that's always been interesting to me, that you know, like you finish this new painting and you're wanting everybody to pay attention to it. And the one they go for is the one you did 11 years ago. So there's just no, I mean, everybody is drawn to different things. And that's why I've been very fortunate in my life that I've always been able to paint what I want to paint. I haven't had to paint to meet a certain market or what's popular now. And so when somebody likes a piece of mine, it's just like this bonus that, wow, somebody likes something I did. You know, and so it's always such a joy when somebody else connects with something.
Mm-hmm. I hope, Catherine, it's okay if I ask another question.
No, go for it. That's
Okay.
that's what we're for.
Okay. So one of the things that has always intrigued me and makes me wonder is I have, over the 35 years that I've had a real studio practice, moved through different styles, and I have different things that I do at the same time of year that I come back to every year. And sometimes when I'm moving paintings around, because some paintings are going out of the house because they've been sold, or some are going to an exhibit, I will park some paintings on a wall just where they fit and don't really curate it so much. And I will look at different paintings, one that may be very crisp and representational, and then see it juxtaposed next to one that is more loose and abstract, and look at them. I remember this happened just a few weeks ago, and I just said out loud to nobody, it's the same painting. You know, there's the same lines, the colors are in the same rhythm and direction. And I just wonder what, you know, like we all have a certain signature when we sign our name, or we have a certain way that our face and our body looks. But to think that unconsciously I'm just repeating some of the same things, it's kind of amazing. Do any of you feel that?
Not exactly the same way, Nina, but I do every fall paint persimmons because they just knock me out. I mean, just as we're going into the darkness of winter, there's these orbs hanging on the trees like ornaments, and it just knocks me out. And, you know, I think, oh, I can't do one more persimmon painting. And then it's like, I have to. But they're never the same, but they have similar elements sometimes.
Yeah, thank you.
It's interesting to just see the strands that go along, because we don't change into different people, but we do emerge and grow and change. So that theme was still there for you, Nina, but I'll bet it also is informed by the years in between too.
Well, really, my paintings are the byproducts of what's happening in my life. You know, I look at a painting and I tell somebody the story if they ask for it. But where was I at that period in my life 10 years ago, 20 years ago? It's, that's the beauty of being able to surround ourselves with these things. You know, another thing is, you know, you could write in a journal, but you would never want to share that with anybody. But these are real public expressions of very private moments.
Yeah. Poetry and painting and music and any form of art have such a capacity to tell the stories that don't necessarily share themselves well in just narrative words.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Catherine, we have a question in the chat from Janet. She says, all of these painters work in traditional media, so I was wondering if any have developed a relationship with digital painting tools or methods.
No.
I have friends who have, and I think there's great potential there. I'm old, and I'm just having the first time in my life to actually give my life to painting. So I'm less into exploration of something new than of just deepening my relationship to what's been in my heart, but I haven't had an opportunity to express for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, go ahead.
Oh, so I really haven't. I took, I don't know, 3 or 4 semester-long Photoshop classes at the JC. Oh, I don't know, 20 years ago. And I thought that this would be a great thing to add to my toolkit. And I remember one day working on a class project, and I started it at 11 in the morning. And before I knew it was dark. It was like 5 or 6 o'clock, and I hadn't hardly gone anywhere or done anything. And it felt like it was a black hole. And so I'm glad I took those classes, because if I work with graphic designers to adapt my digital expressions to products, I understand what I can ask and what can be done, but it's not something, the hands-on experience of creating something is the most ultimate experience in my life. And I'm not ready to give that up. You know, somebody else can do that.
And I think for me, I think to be very proficient at something, it's at the expense of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point in my life, you know, I used to do needlework and sew and ceramics, and when you start to find the one that speaks to you the most, it usually is at the expense of the other things. And happily so. I mean, I always say, you know, in another lifetime, maybe I'll do one of these other things. But right now, I'm so in love with painting watercolor, I have no interest in exploring a different medium.
What's so amazing is that we can both say that after decades, and I know you've been doing this for decades longer than I have, but to just be in love is the way to describe it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean,
And it's so great to have something that is so engrossing that I'm just dying to get out to the studio, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
Doesn't it feel a blessing right now with COVID and everybody
Exactly.
feeling so stuck, and to be able to say, yay, I get to do what I love to do.
I know.
Less interference.
It's
Well,
true.
we have so much preparation for dealing with unstructured, solitary time. You know, if people in our society and our world knew how to do that more, you know, it would just be a lot better.
Yeah.
It's really a gift that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is why the arts are so important, because exactly they bring something that is just beyond the everyday world, and being able to share that, you with your work, but also by able to bring it to other people. I mean, we, like with the center, we need to give that, we need to make that accessible to everyone. Because when you have that, you have something that you will never, it never leaves you alone. I mean, if you can play the guitar, or you can paint, or it's something that is always with you, and that can always make you happy, unhappy sometimes, but most of the time very happy, right? And I think also that talking about the virtual, what was it? What did you say? Use digital painting, right? So tell me if I'm right, because I am not like you, a practicing artist, but I have been a painter or a sculptor. I do know that the difference between, if you get like totally focused on something that's virtual and just only that, you get into on another level, but somehow it feels like it takes something out of you. Where if you are painting or you are playing music, etc., you get to another level, you get to another realm, but it gives something back to you. Could you agree with that?
Well, the excitement that we get can't be equaled by very much else. I can sit down to paint and think that it's 15 minutes, or I like to work late at night. And like last night, I was just preparing some notes for today. And I started at 9:45, and I remember looking up at my computer thinking when it was 11:30 that maybe I should go to bed. The next time I got up, it was 1:45. And so that was 4 hours. It went by like it was 20 minutes. And that's exactly the space that I go to when I'm painting.
Yeah.
And I can do that with painting, but I was talking a few minutes ago about taking Photoshop classes and falling into a black hole. I never feel like it's a black hole
Right.
when I'm working with painting. It's more like a walk through an enchanted forest. It's incredible.
I can conceive, though, that there can be artists who are working in digital media who experience the same trajectory
Yeah.
that we do as artists. In fact, I've often thought about the relationship between the identifying as an artist and the people who do something else, something very far from the arts, but do it with that same level of commitment and of growth of craft and of exploration. And it seems to me that there are artists in every realm of life.
So that's what we have. Oh, that's what we have to teach people. You know, some people say to me when they stand in front of my painting or visit my studio, you know, they give me a compliment, and then the first thing they say a lot of times is, oh, I can't even draw stick figures.
Yeah.
I'll say, well, I can't either. And then I'll say, well, I'm sure there's something that you have that you feel really passionate about. And when you talk to them, you know, by example, helping other people see that, yeah, they may not paint, but what is it that makes them tick? And that's part of the whole excitement and the interplay, and where our paintings are a vehicle for communication, not just about the art, but person to person.
I think that was one of the things that always surprised me teaching high school, was that, you know, the kids would come into class and say, I don't know how to do this. You know, I'm not very good at it. And I said, well, when you go into your algebra class, do you already know how to do algebra? And they say, no. And I said, well, art is the same way. There's some things that will enable you to do your artwork if you learn the structure. Like you don't play jazz usually unless you already know the scale and can interpret and take off from that. But I think there's a lot of people in our society that assume that you're just born being able to do what you do, and that it doesn't take skill and learning. One of the other things that has always been a good thing for me when I was talking to the parents of the kids is, I feel like everybody is an artist in search of their medium. And some people are lucky they find it early in their life, and some people don't look hard enough for it. But I think everybody, whether it's cooking or it's, you know, gardening or whatever it is, there's so many ways to be creative. And I think people just sometimes need encouragement and permission to do it.
Very true.
Oh, Sally, I agree.
Yeah, it was very, very well put.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did you become an artist? Yes. How long have you been an artist? We know that. What motivates you? We went through that. So is there anything else that you would like to talk about still, or share with the others, or something? Okay, will you open your studio to the artist? Are you opening a studio, and is it by appointment, or is it virtually, or?
So mine is by appointment, and it will be outdoor, socially distant visit. Hopefully people, when they make the appointment, I can find out if there are particular things that they're interested in so that I can take them outside. But at this point in time, I think protecting our health is foremost. And it doesn't mean we can't have great visits. It just, people should call and help set that up.
That's easy, right? Nicole or Sally or Mandy?
Go ahead.
No,
Mandy.
you go ahead.
Okay. I'm planning on being open the first 2 weekends. I'm going to have all the doors and windows open, and I'm going to only allow 2 people in at a time, masked. I've got gloves. I've got sanitizer. I've asked for appointments, but if somebody shows up, I certainly will let them in, but only 2 at a time and socially distanced.
I'm newly post-surgery, and so I'm not welcoming people, but if they're, you know, patrons that I know, we can work something out to have me take things out on my deck to them. but I'm not encouraging that particularly much, though I love the encounters with people. I miss this very much.
Well,
Yeah.
and you're not limited to this weekend, right? I mean, you can make an appointment for later when you feel better
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah.
It's important that people contact you in any case, if they're interested.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to do by appointment only, but I'm fortunate to have a deck off the studio. So I'm just going to have people sit on the chairs, tell me what, if they've called me ahead and set up the appointment, they can tell me what they'd like to see and I can just bring it out to them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Very creative ways to deal with it, right? I mean,
Well, we're creators. What do you expect?
yeah, you are. It's very good. It's very good. Yes. Are you happy with the site, with the website showing your work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
very.
Yeah, I think it shows it really well.
Yeah. I think
Well,
it's
if
great.
there are no other questions, I mean, it's up to you.
It would be great if we could take some questions from the audience, if there are any.
Okay, let's see. So does everyone know that you can go into chat and type in a question, or maybe if you can unmute yourself, you could ask a question. Let me see. Anyone in the audience wants to ask a question? Now is the moment.
Thanks to everyone who
Oh,
came.
Marsha wants to ask a question.
I have a funny question, you guys. Do we have Savos signs like we had Art Trails and Art at the Source signs?
So it's a good
You know,
question.
like put in front of your house or anything?
Yeah, does any one of you want to answer it? I mean,
There was a,
Oh.
Janae, you go ahead, because you.
So Marcia, we discussed a few different options for that in terms of trying to kind of use the existing Art Trails and Art at the Source signs and put the Savos logo on them. So if you send me an email, I can kind of give you some direction on that and give you the logo files. The only rule is that it needs to be only in front of your house or your studio and not out on the highways or anything like that.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you. I figure somebody else might have that question too.
But thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you first of all, I mean, it was so interesting to hear you talking about your work and really, really great. As you know, I know you, but I mean, it's always nice to learn something. I learned something again today about all of you. And I thank everyone who came to listen to this and share with us. And well, I hope you will all visit the studios or connect with the artist and maybe see the work in person, which would be really great. Or Andrea Bankson, is that your daughter, Mandy?
Yeah, wait, if she holds him up, there's my grandson. There he is.
Oh, he's darling.
Very nice. I think that's a beautiful way to end. Thank you very much.
Well, so we're going to have the recording of this session. We're going to download it and get it up on the YouTube channel and share it out. So we had quite a few people here live with us, which is awesome. But you'll be able to catch the recording as well if you came in late or missed anything, or if you want to share it with anyone. It'll be up on YouTube soon.
I'd like to encourage anybody listening, if they haven't been brave enough to ask a question in this arena, to call any one of us or email us and ask your question, because we're here because we want to engage with the public. We miss all of you and we hope you'll connect with us.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Nina. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, so if you are a guest and you want to reach out to any of our panelists today, you can just go right to the website. It's just SebArtsVirtual.org. And you can use the search function right on the homepage, as Catherine demonstrated. Glad that worked. Or you can go to the artist directory and look up any of our artists. You'll find all their contact information there, as well as their artworks.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for doing this.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care and have a good studio time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.